Record. So welcome everyone, my name's Harriet, I'm on the marketing team at Float, and today I'm going to be talking to you about Float, how it works, the benefits of using it, the benefits of doing cash flow forecasting, and I'll go into a demo of how the software works and answer any questions that you have at the end. So if you do have any questions that come to mind, could you please send them through to the Q&A icon on your Zoom window? That would be brilliant, thank you. So what is Float? Float is visual, cloud-based operational cash flow forecasting and management software for QuickBooks Online, Xero, and Free Agent. So to just kind of jump into, why should you even be forecasting your cash in the first place? I think this statistic is pretty telling that 81% of businesses that fail say that cash flow is the main reason, and then lack of visibility into their cash flow is a major factor towards that. So not monitoring your cash can put your business at risk. And not seeing what's ahead means you can't properly plan for the future. Building a reliable prediction of the future of a business's cash has been historically really difficult and time-consuming, but not doing a forecast is where businesses can get into trouble, especially now. In the past few weeks, we've heard stories of businesses making some very tough decisions while not having all of the information in front of them. Things like cutting crucial costs, making layoffs when they may not potentially have to. So creating a cash flow forecast will help you, or if you're an accountant or bookkeeper, your clients, understand how to make it through this difficult time. And it can show you exactly what the future would look like if you lost a key client, or if you had to delay paying some bills, if you wanted to hire a new staff member, anything like that, you can map out with Float. So what problem are we solving? I'm sure many of our listeners today have created forecasts in spreadsheets in the past. If you have, you know just how time-consuming and error-prone they can be, especially kind of for right now, they're just really not good enough. They take hours, if not days, to create, and then they fall out of date almost kind of right away. They're not visual, and they can be very hard to get your head around. So just to show you an example, this is a cash flow spreadsheet. And as you can see, it's really hard to see it at a glance how the business is trending over time. It's very numbers heavy, it's not visual, and it can kind of really make you not want to use something like this. And in comparison, this is what Float looks like. So it's very visual. We can see a scenario on this graph in comparison to our base forecast. So we can see what would happen if we lost a client. So it's much more visual, it's intuitive, and it keeps itself up to date as well. So we take away the pain of forecasting cash flow manually in spreadsheets. And the way that we do cash flow forecasts will help you really easily and visually understand the future of your client's business. So a live connection with your accounting software means that Float keeps itself up to date, and you don't need to use too many brain cells to understand what's happening in your business. So how does Float help you? We give you an instant snapshot of key information, including overdue invoices and bills, progress towards or beyond budgets, and a short-term forecast, helping you to instantly see the current and future health of the business. It's easy to understand and visual. So first and foremost, Float was built for business owners who don't necessarily have a financial background. So it's very straightforward, and it will help you really quickly and easily understand your future cash position. One of the features that our users love the most is our scenario planning feature. So you can really easily build kind of what if scenarios for any potential outcome in the future. And we can help you see and act on overdue invoices and bills as we import all invoices and bills every day from your accounting software. So you can see all upcoming payments when they're due. And you can also update the day when you expect that cash to be paid, or ignore anything that you don't think will be paid. And the data that comes into Float is just pushed in one way. So it's never going to change anything in your accounting software itself. Float is a safe place to model different cash outcomes. So we will never ever change anything in your accounting software. So this is really useful to mapping out what cash you or your clients can pay now, and what could be put on hold if you are potentially going through a bit of a tough time just now. So you can also explore budgets versus actuals. You can compare what you thought might happen to what is really happening and what has happened in your business, so you can better budget for the future and compare those budgets versus actuals, which is really helpful, especially for right now, because a lot of the time with the economic situation in mind, you are going to be using your best guess. So being able to compare that to what's happening will then make you more able to refine those forecasts moving forward. And finally, we help you dive into a daily view of business finances. We want to provide as much granularity as possible so you can drill right down into the next days, weeks, and months and see a list of all your upcoming cash movements. Especially, again, right now, you, and if you're an accountant or bookkeeper, your clients, you really need to know day by day what the cash might be doing. So you can check out our reviews on the Xero app marketplace or the QuickBooks app store, see what people are saying, and you can have a wee look at our awards here and on our website if you want to check those out. So I'm going to jump without further ado into my float demo, so just bear with me 1 second. Hopefully everyone can still see my screen. And for those of us who've joined since I first mentioned, if you do have any questions, please send them through to the Q&A icon and I'll get to them just at the end of the webinar. So I'm going to dive into my demo company here. So we'll just let that load. So what I wanted to show you first and foremost when you first log into Float is that we won't have created a forecast for you. So your bank balance line here, and if I show you in our cash flow tab here, this line won't yet look like a forecast because you need to kind of put in your expectations, but we help you to do that as much as possible. So Float's not going to be kind of magically knowing exactly how much cash you're going to be spending and receiving in the future. That is something that you know a lot better than a piece of software. But what we're doing is we're keeping it up to date every day with what's really happening in the business. And flagging any time where your cash is looking to go down into the red. So here on the left-hand side, it's telling us what things we need to do to refine our forecast. So it looks like I've already set expected payment dates on my invoices. So that's ticked. But I do have some things to reconcile up in Xero if I'm a Xero user. If you're a QuickBooks user, you'll be prompted to kind of match your transactions in QuickBooks. It's the same idea. Basically, in Float, you can only see cash as paid once it's been reconciled or matched. So if an invoice or a bill has actually been paid, but you've not told your accounting software that this transaction matches with this invoice or bill, then Float won't know. So the bookkeeping in your company needs to be pretty up to date, really. So we recommend that your reconciliation or matching happens every week, ideally, probably at the least frequent monthly, but the more frequent the better, really, in terms of making sure that Float is as up to date and accurate as possible. So that's why it's going to tell us you need to do some reconciliation. If Float sees there are 15 missing things, and then it tells you the total, then it's going to ask you to go in and do that. And that's an ongoing process. The next thing is to have a look at your invoices and your bills. So it's telling me my invoices are all up to date, but I can click on that and be taken to the invoices due tab. So if I scroll down, I can see a list of all my upcoming invoices, and it looks like I've got the original due date here. And for the most part, I've changed our expected payment dates, assuming that some of these people are going to be struggling to pay me. I can go in and change the day when I actually expect this cash to move. So if you hear from a client and they've actually asked to pay a bit later, or if they told you that the payment's going to be delayed, you can go in and change when you think that cash will move. And again, this does not change anything in your accounting software. So you can do that one by one, or you can select multiple and you can tell it to change all of their expected payment dates. You can choose a date, or you can add a number of days on. So if they always pay 30 days late, then you can do that really easily. Another thing that you can do is you can see what I've done excuse me, for this first invoice here is you can ignore and include it. So we can say, this, I just don't know when I'm going to get paid this, so I'm going to exclude it. Again, it does not change anything in your accounting software, and you can always re-include it. And then it will ask you to change that date because this is now in the past. So if you have any cash that was due in the past, Float thinks it's going to be paid today, which is why we really recommend that you go in and change those dates, because if you leave it all as overdue and in red, Float thinks we're going to get a big influx of cash today. Same thing goes for bills to pay. So if I were to go back to the overview tab and click on bills here, it will take me here. And this is the same idea really. This is bills that I owe, which is easier for me to predict. So I can go in and say, I'm going to get around to paying these towards the end of the week. So let's just push those to Friday. There we go. So we can see that cash has now moved to the 30. Oh no, sorry, that cash has now moved to the 26th. And if we go back to the overview tab, it's now telling me I've done that bit, so that's great. So that's really the three key things to ensure that you're doing first of all. And then on the right hand side, we've got our short-term forecast, we've got our net cash movement. So what I'm going to do is take you to our cash flow tab, which is really where you'll spend most of your time in Float. This is where you get the longer term forecast as well. So you can go up to 3 years ahead using these arrows. You can download a PDF or a CSV version of the forecast, and you can jump back to today. So as I said, when you first log into Float, you might see that this line is a bit flat and you'll be prompted to set some budgets in Float. So if I scroll down here, this shows you your chart of accounts and it will match your unique chart of accounts in your accounting software. It's not going to be necessarily looking like mine, and it will be broken into cash in and cash out. What you can do as well is you can group things together and you can move these accounts around. So if I go to manage table layout, you can play around with these things. You can move them around. You can group them together. So if you want to create a new group, just click on that. If you want to add a new account in from your accounting software, these are all my available ones that I haven't pulled in yet. And so Float won't automatically pull in absolutely everything because that would really crowd your view, and we want to show you just the accounts that you actually use. But if you want to add in any new ones, you can do that here. They do need to already exist in your accounting software for them to be pulled through as available. So if you wanted to add something brand new, you just need to go into your accounting software and create it there first and then do a sync. So we sync with your accounting software every 24 hours. If you want to do a manual sync, you just click this button and it will reload your data in just a minute. But again, that does happen every day on its own anyway. So it's just reloading my data for me. So this is telling us our total current reconciled balance in zeros. This is the current cash based on what's reconciled. And we've got the amount that still needs to be reconciled up. So that's telling me that my balance could be about £3,000 off my actual bank balance in zero. And then I've got my date, my cash falls below a set threshold. So if I want to know when does my cash fall below £5,000, it's telling me that that's the 31st of August. If I go over to here, I can see that's dipping towards the end of August, dipping down right there. So if I want to, I can set that threshold to be a different amount. It could be zero. So when does my cash fall below zero? Okay, that's the end of September. So that's a nice kind of a little alert to tell me, if I have, a certain amount in mind where I'd be worried, I can find out what date that's going to be happening on, if any. And then we can choose our bank accounts in here. So we've got bank accounts and credit cards live in here. You can pick and choose which ones you'd like to bring in. Whichever ones you choose will be combined into this line on your forecast. So that can be a combination of multiple bank accounts and credit cards. So as you can see, you can hover over this line over time and see what the bank balance is doing. And as I said, you can go up to 3 years ahead here. Scrolling down, as I showed you, this is really where your next thing to do is, so you really need to create some budgets. And that is going to be what makes this forecast actually look like a forecast. So as I said, you guys know better than we do what's happening in your business. We can show you what's happened in the past. So if I can open out May, I can click in here and show you, okay, well, we budgeted 26,000. We received 13,500. If I click in here, I can say, okay, here's our budgets. This is what they totaled to. And what was actually paid was about 13,500. And I can click into any of these and get that great detail. So again, this would be impossible to achieve in a spreadsheet. getting all of these line items and things that I can click into and check. So that's what's happened in the past. If I look into June sales, I can have a look at what I've got here. So nothing's paid yet. We've got 6 invoices due, and those are, we've seen these earlier. They were just in the invoices due tab. You can again click into them and change the date you expect that cash to be paid on. You can also split them into part payments if you have a payment plan worked out with a client. You can do that by value or percentage. And you can exclude it as well. So what you want to do really for every account that you have here is create budgets for future cash. So these are all budgets I've made myself and I named them myself. So if I wanted to create a new one, I can click create budget. I will give it a name here. And I would say, okay, this happens every month, every 2 weeks, every week, every quarter or year, or it's just one off. And then what date that comes in by. So I'm going to say, by the end of June, and this is going to be £2,000, but you can make it be whatever you want. If you look to the right-hand side here, we give you some suggestions. So we can tell you, why don't you use last month's actual for sales? So that's 13,000 or an average of the past 3 months. So you can use that. If you click it, it will populate this field. So you can definitely use that to speed up the process, but I'm going to keep it as that just to manually do that myself. And I can see it's up to my total monthly budget here. So all of these budgets that we add for different dates of the month total up to this monthly total. And then we can compare what's coming in terms of invoices versus what the total is. So you might be wondering, does Float import my budget from my accounting software? The answer is no, because Float is a cash-based forecasting platform. So your budget in your accounting software is most likely P&L. So the P&L budgets don't fit into cash flow because they need to be changed for when you actually think that cash will be paid, versus when, say, you create an invoice. So technically on a P&L that would show as paid this month, when in reality your client might not pay you for 90 days. So we care about when that client pays you versus when you generate the invoice for that. So what you might want to do if you do have a forecast already in a spreadsheet or in Xero or QuickBooks is you can export that to a spreadsheet, tweak it to make it cash-based, and then you can use spreadsheet input here. So if you click on this button to the right-hand side, it brings up this spreadsheet view where you can literally just copy and paste an entire line from one place to another, and you can go outside of Float, grab a line from a spreadsheet and copy it into. So that will help you get set up. If you already have the forecast, whether it's a P&L budget or not, you can copy it in if you want. And you can also use this to kind of type in different amounts. You use your arrow keys like you would in a spreadsheet. Whatever you want, you can type in those amounts. The one caveat I would say for this is that it's going to choose the first of the month as the payable date, and it's going to override any pre-existing budgets you already had in that cell. So if I put 7,000 here, it's going to tell me, okay, well, you're going to get a chunk of 7,000 paid on the first. But I might want to say, okay, well, that's going to be across several different payments. If that's the case, then you can cancel out of here and budget for that individually. So we can go down to here and say, okay, well, I'm going to pay, a budget for this on, the 1st, the 15th and the 30th. If that's the case, then you can do that here individually by creating individual budgets. So you've got those two options. Spreadsheet input is useful for those accounts where you have just one payment per month. Things like bank fees, things like rent, you can just copy that across. So the important thing is to come in and create your budgets and really think about how much cash you'll be spending and receiving, using our suggestions if you like. And then thinking about tax. If you're in the UK, you probably have a VAT payment that you need to pay. So Float doesn't automatically calculate that. There's various reasons why that is. But what you can do is you can add in forecasts for that. So put in your predictions. So what I've done here is I've just added a quarterly budget in here for VAT. So you can go in and change individual instances of that as well. So that's something that you can do. And then with coronavirus in mind, what I'd done is I've kind of put in some assistance from the government around furlough and potential bounce back loan. So what I'd done is I'd excluded also some cash in from various different clients that I thought would not be paying me. But with the bounce back loan, we're actually doing okay in the first few months. But what you might want to do is create other scenarios for various different things happening. So if I click in here, I can show you. I've got a cutting cost scenario. So in here, what I did is I went in and I looked at our people costs, and I excluded some contractor cash out. So saying, okay, what happens if we let these guys go temporarily for the next few months? Then I can see how that impacts my cash. I also went to see if I could do a rent holiday, so decreasing our rent for a little while. And also if we can defer our VAT payment. So we had one in June, we've deferred it out to March next year. So you can use your arrows to see how far that goes. So I added it into March as well. So this scenario shows us that this is how we can stay above the rent. So that's helping me make some really crucial decisions for my business. In normal times, I would show you a new employee scenario. So this is one that you can do as well. So this is increasing our salaries. You could also increase your sales as a result of that. So I look in here, I can see I've added new staff salary for £3,000. Also, if I decide that this is something I want to go ahead with, I can just move it to my base and I can say, this is actually going to happen now. So I can click that and it's now in our base forecast. And if I go back to our base, you can see it will now live in salaries. So we can see that in here. I've got the new stuff one in here. So it means you don't have to duplicate effort if you've already done it all in a scenario and you want that to be taken into account moving forward in your base forecast. Then you can use that quick option to move it in. And just to let you know, your base forecast here, your main one, should be the realistic one, should be the most conservative outcome for your cash. And then you can run scenarios on top of that. So I've done another one I based it on the cutting cost scenario, and I added in a sales increase as well, because we're hoping for a little rush of sales as the UK comes out of lockdown. So that's scenario planning. To create a new scenario, just click the drop down and click add scenario layer. You can also delete any existing scenarios that you have and jump back to your base. The other couple of areas I want to show you is daily breakdown and insights. I'm going to show you daily breakdown just quickly, which is showing us the day-to-day view of their cash. So we can go up back to the beginning of June. We can even just look at a couple of weeks if we want to. I think that daily breakdown comes into its own when you're looking at the short term because it allows you to really dig in. So if you see a fluctuation on the main graph of your cash, you can zoom into that here. So we can say, okay, well, what's causing this dip? Scroll down and see a list of all your upcoming changes to your cash. That can be invoices or bills, or it can be budgets that you've got remaining. The budgets in float that I mentioned before, they act like empty placeholders that fill up. So say you've set a £10,000 sales budget and then 4,000 gets paid. You don't then have 14,000. You actually have 4,000 with 6,000 remaining yet to be paid. So it's like an empty placeholder that then fills up, which is why you're seeing remaining budget in here, because that whatever portion of that budget that you expected to be paid has not yet been paid. So if I were to look at remaining budget for rent, I can see, okay, the budget that I've got left is 1181. If I click into here, I can see actually it was due on the 1st of June. So what's happened is because that's not been paid and reconciled, it's rolled forward to today's date. So that's why you're seeing quite a few of these budgets on today's date. If for whatever reason that budget's not going to be paid, you can just ignore it. So click into that instance and click the little eye icon to ignore it. Or delete it if you want. You can do that too. So I'm going to just discard changes. So that's the daily breakdown. This is showing you basically, I like to think of it like a bank statement for the future. You can see what has happened in the past and what's expected to happen in the future in the short term. And then finally, our Insights tab. I won't show you all of these, but I think one of the most useful is budget variance, which I mentioned towards the beginning, where you can compare what you had budgeted to what's really been happening, whether that's 3 months or 1 month. Excuse me. And then you can dig into these as well. So I can see this is only 0.86% off, which is pretty decent actually. If I click into that, then I can see the more granular view of this. I can compare my total budgets to what's actually been due, what's been paid. Go into May, I can see my budgets versus what was paid. So this is obviously information you can see elsewhere in the cash flow tab, but it's presenting it all in one screen for you. And you can view this in the scenario view. You can also choose another account if you want to zoom into a different account too. And then another report that is really useful is scenario comparison. So if you want to layer multiple scenarios on top of one another, you can absolutely do that in here. As many as you like, you can put on. And you can set the date range as well. You can export this to a PNG. So that's pretty handy too. So that's pretty much everything I wanted to show you. If you do have any questions as you use Float, you can always send us a message via this chat icon, start a new conversation with us, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. It's not always live chat because we are a relatively small team, so we will always get back to you, but just not necessarily immediately. So if you want, you can leave your question there and you'll get a response by email. And we also have a help site, help.floatup.com. If you have any questions, you can click onto the help center here. It will take you there. We also have, you can always sign up for another webinar or watch a webinar recording on there, or just check out any of these articles. So that's me coming to the end of my spiel today. But if anyone has any questions for me right now, please do send them through. I'll give you a second to do that to the Q&A icon if you can. Okay, I've had a question from Delicia saying, if you have set a budget for something like HubSpot, but it's actually paid, amalgamated with other payments, so perhaps it's like a marketing payment and a portion of that is to do with HubSpot, I'm guessing. Is it possible to split this one payment to different categories? E.g. from this £10,000 spend, 5,000 is to go towards HubSpot and 5,000 towards HPMS. That would be to do with your reconciliation in your accounting software, Delicia. So if there's a £10,000 spend, you would need to allocate some of that towards a HubSpot invoice and some of it towards an HPMS invoice. So it's to do with how that's done in the accounting software. If it all goes into the one category, you can see it in Flow and you can compare your budgets to that. And you can also put notes in. So if that's not possible, what you can do is, so let's go into our advertising. So if I click onto May and I've got this, say this Hoyt Productions thing, and I wanted to make a note about that, I can click into this little notes tab and just say, this is what this was about, and save that note. And then it will look like an Excel note with a little triangle in the corner where I can click on that and review what I was meaning by that. But ideally, it would be, the best solution would be to break that payment up in your accounting software. Cool. Another question, if you've set a budget for something like HubSpot, oh, sorry, I think that's the same question sent twice. Cool. Any other questions, guys? One thing that sometimes gets asked is, how do I show this to people who don't have a login? You can, as I showed you, you can export this to a CSV or a PDF. You can choose whether or not you want to show our logo, export that there. And if you're on a scenario view, it will export your scenario for you. And then click on the download and you can see the forecast on the graph. You can see the summary of cash in, cash out, net movement, and then the full breakdown as well. So that can be useful. We've heard that's been useful recently for even things like bank loan applications. But, you know, potentially for, you know, a board pack, you know, for a board meeting, or, you know, anything like that, you can do that easily. But always, you know, it is useful to add people as users. So you can always add them to your actual live account and they can collaborate with you in the cloud. Brilliant. I don't see any more questions, so I hope this was helpful. Oh, actually, sorry, some have come through on the chat box. Okay, cool. Thanks, Jeffrey. So yeah, I hope this has been helpful. If you do have any more kind of thoughts that come to mind, you can always email us, support@flowtap.com, or if you're using your trial, you send us a message via this chat box. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Cheers.